Well, we have a lot going on in terms of weather across the U.S. and around the world that we got to talk about here. Everything from flooding to heat, you name it. There's a lot going on with this weather picture. Joining us now for our weekly conversation, Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric, thanks for being with us here. No doubt, I'm sure you are busy. Just seeing some of the pictures and video from Northwest Iowa, Southeast South Dakota, Southern Minnesota of this massive flooding. I have to think there's going to be some crop loss with this beyond just the loss of homes and businesses and things like that. But what an amount of rainfall that has fallen here in the last few days.
Yeah, and the top question I'm getting asked is like, are we going into 1993 again? And it was fun this morning to think about that problem. I spoke with several people over the weekend about it. Is it like 1993? What's interesting is no, it's not. Remember, 1993 got wet right about now. It was mid-June all the way through July that 1993 hammered that area. So when you think about how wet it's been, just to understand that this is a whole new set of problems. We had between 6 and 15 inches of rain that hit parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And unfortunately, the near-term pattern is not bringing much relief. We have a couple of more drier days, but there's still going to be more storms, and any additional rainfall is going to cause a problem. I got asked another interesting question, and that was how much flooding are we going to get in the Mississippi? We got to remember, this is a pretty localized area. It's huge, but the Mississippi Basin drains 40% of the land area of the lower 48. And on the Illinois River and the Ohio River, which are major contributors to the Mississippi, that's bone dry. So you have your eastern Corn Belt, which has been so dry, your western Corn Belt, which has been so wet, it's a plague in that part of the country with respect to how much water we've got. And the result is the river lives right in the middle of it. And that's the ultimate problem. So while there's flood watches and warnings all on the tributaries that feed into the upper Midwest side, we have the eastern Corn Belt that would be glad to just get any bit of that water over to our region. So that's a big question, Jesse. Are we going to be able to take the moisture out of what we often call the brown ocean? When you saturate the soil that much, it's like a brown ocean. Can you get that moisture out and into this section of the Corn Belt? I'm sure that the northern Corn Belt and western Corn Belt would love to share. It's just a matter of getting the flow pattern to do that. So yes, this has been a pretty wacky go of it here just recently. And by the way, that's just the Corn Belt. The exceptional heat to the east and now in the south. Today in the south central United States, really getting into the western Corn Belt today, we've got heat advisories that stretch from, the Gulf Coast to Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota. It's going to be 100 degrees, Kansas, Missouri. And storms are going to run through the mountains, and Canada will be like, send the heat our way. They've been cold and cloudy and wet. And so, my goodness, what you want to know what I'm up late nights thinking about? It's this. It's every day trying to figure out where it's going to go. So, yeah, the question is loaded, and we have to try to figure out where it's going to go.
Well, we have a lot of heat as well as kind of this ring of fire effect that's happening right now as well, and set up. And talk about that a little bit, Eric.
Yeah, so this is a year where we've already seen the jet stream, which has maintained its momentum. The jet stream has not lost momentum, but it's just shifted north. So what happens is to the south of it, where the flow isn't, you have no upper level wind. So what you end up getting is this big just ridge, and it just slides back and forth like this. And over the next, from now through the 4th of July, it's going to try to live somewhere in the Mid-South. So I'm sorry, I know you live in the Mid-South, over to the Southern Plains. And all around its periphery, it's going to storm. So unfortunately, if you look at a map for the next 15 days, you continue to see the western Corn Belt, upper Midwest stormy. We're going to try to get storms south of I-70. That's going to be this tough line to break through to get the storm south into. They'll likely at times break it, but I'm talking about really good rains getting down to stop what has been some flash drought development. That's going to be the trick, because nothing has changed. The jet stream is just screaming across the U.S.-Canada border, and the ridge just lives somewhere between the Southern Plains and the Mid-South as we go forward in this forecast. So persistence is going to win the game.
Well, Eric, as we look at everything going on here in the U.S., we got other issues around the world as well that we should probably talk about. So, talk about this global weather picture that you're seeing. And I'm seeing a lot of the chatter on social media, folks are saying, oh, all of this happening is an effect of this or that or whatnot. So, walk us through this global weather picture right now, what you're seeing.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of misattribution to what's causing this. And I'll just tell you, most of it, when I look at it, I would just say that it's the heat in the North Atlantic, and it's the heat that sits right in this kind of west to east boundary in the North Pacific. So, yeah, is La Nina trying to get going? Sure. But I don't think it's controlling this pattern right now. I think it's the North Atlantic and North Pacific jet stream position that's keeping the momentum, especially in the Pacific. Okay, so what has it done? Well, for most of June, we had a heat wave in the Russian wheat belt. Now it's cold there, still dry. Ukraine, southern Russia, not picking up much moisture. I think that needs so much more attention than it's gotten. The Indian monsoon has been very late. But, with the heat, it's been problematic, but rains are trying to get into the Indian monsoonal region, like the Ganges River Valley. What about China? China's had flooding along the Yangtze River, but drought near the North China Plain, which is where we grow a lot of corn and beans. The Manchurian Plain is the tricky spot, though. They've been getting decent rains, and that's a huge part of their corn belt, if you will. And by the way, it's finally starting to rain now that it's winter in Australia, and they do grow a lot of winter crops there, but they could have used this moisture back in fall. So it's not just, here in the States that's dealing with some adverse weather. The whole planet seems to be in this pretty massive readjustment period. And by the way, I will attribute the massive readjustment to the development of La Nina, but La Nina is not the cause of all of this at this moment.
I should ask as well. I know we saw that tropical system hit Mexico here in southern Texas. A lot
Yeah.
of talk initially that was going to help alleviate a lot of drought concern in Mexico. Did that actually was that end up being the case there with that system, Eric?
Yeah, it was the beginning. Alberto was the beginning of that. And we do see more moisture getting into Mexico. So Mexico is going to go from one extreme to the other pretty quickly. Way too little rain for a month and a half, and now bringing in moisture from the tropics. And that's not good for agriculture for them either, right? You never want to break a drought hard, but that's what they did. They just went from one extreme to the next. And that's what honestly, that's what the Western Corn Belt did too. We had 4 years of drought problems in Iowa, and it's just been erased. Most of northern Iowa has already received its entire allotment for the year in terms of rainfall. And we're not even at the halfway point, so it's incredible just to think that through.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, let's wrap this up for this week. I know, again, a lot going on. A lot's going to change here over the next few days as well with the continued pattern and more. So, I mean, what do you want folks to remember? What do you want to reiterate to them as we look at the weather here this week, Eric?
I would just say that now for the next 30 days, we will see a weather premium in the market. It's going to be watching this highly contrasted pattern, especially in the Corn Belt, and wanting to know if those that need the rain are going to get it, and if those who have had too much are going to continue to get it as well. I think this could be one of those years where we start to see a tremendous amount of volatility, in the next 30 days. So make sure you're keeping aware of these weather forecasts.
And we're going to have to see how much crop loss we do end up with in some of those very wet portions of the Northwestern Corn Belt here over the next 30 to 60 days, I would say as well. I know folks can stay up to date with the weather, agweather.com, ag-wx.com for more information. Sign up for his weekly weather newsletter there as well. Eric Stodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric, thanks for joining us this week. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.